I'm 82 years old. For 54 years I've carried two numbers in my head, 1 to 12. That was our kill ratio, the professional American soldier. Then there's the other number, 1 to 500. That was theirs. 4 men who smelled like dirt, carried rifles that looked like junk, and walked straight into a 30-man ambush. I saw it all through my binoculars. 23 enemy dead, 0 friendly casualties. My commander told me magic wasn't real, but they didn't fight. They danced. They moved through a wall of fire like it was rain. For half a century I tried to make people listen to what I saw, to the lesson that cost us so many good men. If you believe some truths are worth fighting for, even decades later, subscribe. And leave a mark below if you've ever known the cost of being right when the whole world was wrong. Because this story, it needs to be told. So I have to ask you, what do you do when you hear something that breaks all the rules of survival? Heard the radio call, knew they were walking to their deaths, but the tone of his voice, he wasn't scared. He sounded like a man who was bored. How can you be bored on your way to die? And how do you command your own men when you've just witnessed a level of soldiering that makes your own hard-won expertise feel like a child's game? What I saw that day, it changed everything. Stay with me here. You need to understand. I'm going to tell you what happened. Not the poetry they accused me of writing. The truth. How 4 men walked through a wall of fire like it was rain. It was August 1968, Long Khan province, right in the thick of the monsoon season. You got to understand what that means. It wasn't just rain. It was the air itself. It was water. 90% humidity, the briefing said. Temperatures in the 90s. You'd be soaked through in 30 seconds just standing still. We were on Operation Tuan Thang 2, a big American show, but we were just a small piece. Our platoon from the 82nd was tasked with providing overwatch. Babysitting, we called it. For a 4-man Aussie patrol from a unit I'd never heard of, SASR. They were going deep. We were setting up on a ridge, basically their safety net. A safety net they were never supposed to need. We were the professionals. We had the numbers, the gear, the air support. They had 4 guys. I thought it was a joke, a tragic joke. I remember getting choppered into Newiat, the Aussie base, a week before. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It wasn't a bad smell, not like our fire bases, which smelled of diesel, burning crap, and fear. Newiat. It smelled like red dirt after a rain. And steak. I swear to God. Like a backyard barbecue. And it was quiet. Too quiet. Men walking around in shorts, sandals. They called them thongs. I saw a sign for an outdoor movie theater. It felt wrong, unserious. I remember thinking, what the hell kind of war are these guys fighting? It felt like a summer camp. I was a professional. I was used to the grime, the noise, the constant grinding edge of being in the suck. This place felt clean. It made me uneasy. It made me look down on them, if I'm being honest. We heard the stories, of course. Around a wet fire, you'd hear things, whispers. I remember a Marine gunny, old guy, leather-faced, telling me once, "You see them Aussies from the SAS? You stay clear. They ain't right." He wasn't smiling. I just laughed it off. I turned to Miller, my RTO, and said, "You hear that, Tex? Ghost stories. These tales of 4-man teams that would just disappear into the jungle for weeks. No radio contact, no support, living off the land. We thought it was bullshit. I mean, we were airborne. We were the tip of the spear. We moved fast. We hit hard. 10, 12 clicks a day was standard. These rumors, they said the Aussies did 2, maybe 3. We thought they were lazy or scared. We were so sure we knew better. 23 years old and I had war all figured out. Christ, I was an idiot. It was 3 days before the ambush. We were setting up the OP and they passed right below us, maybe 75 yards out, and I saw them for the first time. Not as a concept, as men. 4 of them. I put my binoculars on them, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. It rose up from the trail. I could smell them from 75 yards away, and it wasn't a human smell, not like us. We smelled of sweat and gun oil and shit from the burn pits. These men, they smelled like the jungle floor, like wet dirt and rotten leaves and something else, something wild, feral. I remember pulling my nose into my collar without even thinking, and I thought, God forgive me, I thought, these aren't soldiers, they're animals. Their uniforms were faded to a color that wasn't even green anymore, almost black, and they didn't walk, they flowed. I couldn't help myself. It was my job. I was the professional, the babysitter. I grabbed the handset from Miller, my RTO. I watched the leader, the one they called Nate, just gliding over the ground. I keyed the mic, and I said, SAS Patrol, this is Sierra 1. You boys read me? His voice came back instantly, no static, clear as a bell. Read you, Sierra 1. And I looked at them through the glass. They looked exhausted, worn down to the bone. So I said, look, we got a full resupply up here, hot chow, clean water. You boys want to come up for a spell? He didn't even pause, and his voice, it wasn't angry, it wasn't sarcastic, it was just flat, a statement of fact. And he looked right up at my position, right at me, and he said, Negative, Sierra, we're good. Thanks for the offer, mate. And then I saw their rifles. They were carrying SLRs, big, heavy mothers, but they were all wrong. The plastic furniture, the handguards, were all wrapped in green jute cord. The barrels were chopped down, shorter than regulation. Looked like something you'd do in a back alley garage, not something for a professional soldier. They had no packs, none. Just this weird, raggedy webbing made of canvas and rubber that looked like it was from the last war. Everything was tied down with inner tubes. There were no rattles, no noise, nothing. And I remember turning to Tex Miller, my RTO, and I whispered, Look at that gear. It's a damn mess. One good fall and it's all over. But as I watched, the point man just stopped. He didn't signal. He just stopped. And the other 3 froze. A full second later, a tree branch, a big one, fell right where he would have been, right on the trail. And he hadn't even looked up. Not once. But that was just the beginning. Because what I was about to hear on the radio 3 days later, that was going to change everything I thought I knew about being a soldier. It was only later, after it was all over, that I really understood. About the smell, about all of it. Nate, their patrol leader, he explained it to me once, in that quiet way of his. He said the NVA, they were hunters, really. They could smell an American patrol from 200 meters off if the wind was right. They could smell our soap, our rations, our confidence. So for 2 weeks before a patrol, his men, they'd go native. No deodorant, no coffee, no booze. They'd wash in cold, unscented water. And the last 48 hours, they'd rub their skin and clothes with mud and crushed leaves from the area they were going into. They didn't want to mask their scent. They wanted to change it, to smell of the jungle itself. I thought it was insane. But he showed me the numbers, a report. U.S. units had an enemy-initiated contact rate of nearly 70%. 70. Theirs? Under 10. And suddenly my professional pity started to feel a lot like professional ignorance. And it went deeper. Everything we did, they did the opposite. We operated in platoons, 30 men, a show of force. They used 4, just 4. We believed in speed. 10, 12 clicks a day was a good day's work. We were there to cover ground. They moved. I can't even describe how slowly. Maybe 2 clicks in a day. It drove me crazy watching them. I thought they were lazy, scared. But they weren't just covering ground. They were absorbing it. Every step was a decision. Every sound, every broken twig. It was a conversation. We were always on the radio. Constant chatter. Sierra 1, sit rep, over. Every hour. It was our lifeline. They maintained radio silence for weeks. Weeks. Their lifeline was the man next to them. We were taught to react to contact. They were taught to dictate it, to be ghosts, to see and never, ever be seen. The whole thing. It was 2 completely different ideas of what war was. My entire career, from basic training at Fort Bragg to leading men in combat, was built on one simple idea: overwhelming force, attrition. We were the hammer. They were the nail. Our job was to be bigger, louder, and more lethal than anything else on the battlefield. We were there to intimidate, to project power. That was our doctrine. Theirs was the exact opposite. It wasn't about force, it was about flow. It wasn't about intimidation, it was about invisibility. I remember Nate looking at our brand new M16s, our shiny gear. And he said in that quiet way of his, "You blokes want Charlie to know you're here. We want him to doubt we even exist." And that shook me. It really did. Because it wasn't arrogance. It wasn't a boast. It was a statement of fact. And it made a terrifying amount of sense. It was the 14th of August, just after 1100 hours. We'd been watching that trail for 3 days, a ribbon of mud and shadow cut through a wall of green. Miller, my RTO, he gets the flash traffic. Confirmed NVA platoon, 25, maybe 30 men, dug in 200 meters north of the Aussies' position. A classic linear ambush. A kill sack. I grabbed the handset. My duty was clear. I called Nate Williams, the Aussie corporal, told him everything, the numbers, the location, the certainty of it. And his voice came back. No static, no panic. Just this flat, calm tone, like I'd just given him the weather. He said, "Affirmative, continuing." That was it. And my blood it ran cold. I watched through my binoculars as they kept walking. 4 men. 4 men walking into a meat grinder. I could smell the damp earth, the rot. I could taste the grit in my own teeth. And then the jungle exploded. The noise, Christ, a wall of sound. AKs, an RPD machine gun, the whump of an RPG. It was the sound of a platoon being erased. I screamed into my own fist, "Get down, get down!" But they didn't. I swear to God, they didn't even flinch. They didn't run for cover, they just kept walking. Same pace. But it was different now. They were weaving, not dodging. It was like watching water flow around rocks in a stream. It was smooth, economical. I saw flashes from their rifles, not sprays, just pop. A single, deliberate pop. Then another. My mind couldn't catch up. Everything I knew, everything I had ever seen in 19 firefights, told me they should be dead, torn apart in the first 5 seconds. But they were on their feet, and they were still moving forward, straight into the teeth of it. In the first 10 seconds, the machine gun went silent, just stopped. I focused on one of them, the point man. I saw an NVA soldier stand up not 15 yards from him, rifle raised. And the Aussie, he didn't even break stride. He just turned his shoulders slightly and his rifle coughed once. The NVA soldier just folded, dropped, and the Aussie was still walking. It took 4 minutes. 4. The sound of the ambush just fell apart, like a machine grinding its own gears to dust. First it was chaos, then confusion, then silence. A silence so loud it hurt my ears. And out of the smoke, on the other side of the kill zone, they came. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still walking, same pace. They didn't even look back. And I lowered my binoculars and looked at Tex. His face was white. He just whispered, "Sarge." They walked right through it, like rain. 23 enemy dead, 0 friendly casualties. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about being a soldier, it just turned to ash. The ride back in the chopper was silent. My guys, they were professionals. They saw what I saw, but nobody said a word. What was there to say? Back at Newiat, I went straight to the debrief. I sat down with Major Hayes. Good man. By the book. I tried to explain. I told him they didn't take cover, that they didn't react, they just flowed. I used words like fluidity, economy. I felt like an idiot. He just steepled his fingers, looked at me over the top of his glasses, and said, "Sergeant, your report says they moved with impossible fluidity. There's no box for that on the form. The facts are, 4 men killed 23 of the enemy and took no losses. That's an outstanding result. Write that." And I sat there, stunned. I looked at my own hands, the hands of a professional soldier, and I felt like a child who'd just been told magic isn't real, right after I'd seen a man pull a rabbit out of a hat. I walked out of that tent and the world was different. The sound of our generators, the smell of our chow, the shine on our boots, it all felt wrong. It felt loud, arrogant. I knew, right then, that we were playing the wrong game, and nobody else could even see the board. Over the next few weeks, I tried. God, I tried. I took my squad out and made them move slow, 2 clicks a day. I had them wrap their gear in cut-up inner tubes, just like the Aussies. The looks I got, the whispers, "Sarge has lost it." 2 weeks later, on a patrol near the Rung Sat, we were forced to move at speed to meet a timetable set by command. We made noise. We were a hammer, and we walked right into a single claymore. We lost PFC Evans, a kid from Idaho, 19, and I knew. In my bones, I knew if we'd been moving like them, like ghosts, he would have come home. I wrote 11 reports about that day. 11. I put the numbers in, the ratios, 1 to 500 for the SASR, 1 to 12 for us. I explained their methods, the scent prep, the silence, the patience. It did nothing, worse than nothing. I became that sergeant with the SAS ghost story. My career, it didn't end, it just leveled off, flatlined. For 54 years I've had the same dream. I'm watching through the glass, and it's Evans who walks into that kill zone. And I'm screaming into a dead radio, telling him to stop. I wake up with the words in my mouth. Continue. That's the real cost. It isn't the promotions I didn't get. It's the names, the faces of the men I lost after I knew better, after I'd seen the truth and failed to make anyone listen. Why don't they listen? The answer is pride. It's as simple and as ugly as that. Institutional pride. We'd invested so much in our way of doing things. All that money, all that training, all that absolute certainty that we were the best. To admit that 4 blokes with chopped-down rifles and a different philosophy were not just better, but exponentially better. The cost of that admission was just too high. Higher than the cost of a few men's lives, anyway. I gave them the numbers, the proof, 11 times, and we kept on doing things the wrong way, for decades. You know when the American military really started to absorb these lessons? Not really until Afghanistan. 30 years and 2 wars later. 30 years of young men paying the price for arrogance. How do you look at that? You have all the evidence in the world, and it changes nothing because it's too painful to admit you were wrong. It makes you wonder, where are you doing that in your own life? Ignoring a hard truth because the lie is more comfortable. What's it costing you? I asked you 3 questions at the start. It's taken me more than 50 years to find the answers. The first one, what do you do when you see something that breaks the rules of survival? You shut your mouth, you open your eyes, and you pray you're smart enough to learn. The second, how can a man be bored on his way to die? He can't. That wasn't boredom in Nate's voice. It was certainty, a kind of absolute focus that lives on the other side of fear, a place I've never been. And the last one, how do you command men after you've seen that? You do it with a humility that tastes like ash in your mouth. You do it knowing your best is just a shadow of what's possible. And you do it knowing that for every man you bring home, the ghosts of the ones you lost because of what you didn't know are standing right behind you. 1 to 500, those were their numbers. 1 to 12 were ours. For 54 years, that's the math that wakes me up in the middle of the night. It always ends with the same question, how many? How many of our boys would still be here if we'd just listened?